Biggest story this week involves this gentleman here to my right. All right. Chairman Powell, and of course, the Fed decision. How is that going to impact the stock market? Well, let's take a look at where we were a week ago and where we are now. And what you're going to see is a bit of consolidation, but then there's some surprises that have happened looking at the 40,000 foot view as well. So starting last week with the S&P, I talked about the fact that we had resistance at 566 with a target of 580 as we head closer and closer to the 2024 election. What has happened in the last week? We've had a bit of a rebound. We have had a huge rebound coming from 540 as a low coming into the 560 area. So 566 still is resistance, but we are knocking on resistance's door right now. I still like that 580, 585 target. And we could see that really, really soon after this potential Fed decision that's coming out this week. So we could get a slingshot up. We could get a pullback to the downside too. Anything is possible. But from what the markets are telling me, and we keep hitting this ceiling, eventually that ceiling will get broken. All right, TLT last week, we were talking about the fact that we were just shy of 100, that the trend was up, that we should see new year-to-date highs very, very soon. Even though we had seasonal bearishness happening, that the trend was up, and look what happened. Last week, we jumped above 99, 100, 101, and we're getting close to that 102.5 area, which is where we saw target resistance happening. But as of now, we have broke above year-to-date highs with TLT. So the bond market's already telling us the rate cuts are coming, and bond traders are buying into this TLT, which is the 20-year Treasury bond ETF. Take a look at USO. So we've been pushing USO potentially going lower for some time. And last week we fell below 70 on the USO. Our target is around 65. But however, that target, we don't expect that to happen until we get closer to the end of the year. We have a little bit of bullishness happening in this target. We got as low as, looks like about 68.50. Well, last week we dropped down to around the lows of the year, down around the 67 area. That was the lows we saw in January of this year, and have backed off above that and started to move a little bit higher into the week. And right now we're trading back above 70. So we could see some snapback. There is seasonal bullishness when you look at the next couple weeks, but the next few months continue to show us going to the downside. All right. GLD, last week we were flirting with new highs. We actually are getting towards what more is likely as the end of a seasonal bearishness. In fact, seasonal bearishness ends right now. Still strong, however, and the trends are still strong. We still have that 250 target on GLD. What's happened in the last week? We hit new all-time highs when we jumped up to 238. In fact, we had 2 gap days in a row last week where we gapped into the mid 230s, and the following day we gapped into the high 230s. If we get a big Fed cut, all right, and I'm talking about something that's around the neighborhood of 0.5 point or maybe even higher, there's a very low chance of that happening. But if it does, that's going to push, I think that's going to push gold and GLD closer and closer to the mark that we're looking for, which is 250. So our takeaways for the overall markets look like this. Stocks are near all-time highs, pre-Fed decision, which is going to be later this week. The bond market and gold, GLD, we're talking about TLT and GLD, the ETFs for both bonds and gold, are, as we speak, hitting new year-to-date highs. They hit them last week, and they're flirting with them again this week. And oil is really the only dropper of the list we talked about today. And guess what? That's as expected, and we expect oil to continue to move lower. However, I think we're getting down to the lows where it's going to become something of value, especially when we get into 65, that 65 area on USO. Then I think that becomes a value because there's an area there where we start to see really some, the potential for the folks at OPEC to tighten up a bit on output. But right now, output is back to record levels. And of course, that has a lot to do with oil dropping. But really for us, it's a seasonal move.